glasses on to read my notes, but then I have to look over the top
So
to see who I'm talking to. But you do the same thing, you wear your glasses right here, don't you?
I've got grooves on my forehead from
when you first came in.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to be rude about you, being old friends? When we first met, I'm going to guess, gosh, when you founded Three Man Gaming, probably?
No, before that, Black Bean Games, I think.
Blimey, how long ago is that? Shall we talk about that or not?
25 years.
25 years, okay. Are we friends?
Yes, so far. We'll see at the end of this.
So far. Last time I saw you, we're at GDC. We're having dinner at GDC,
Yeah.
weren't we? Did you enjoy that? Was that a nice night out?
It was very nice, thank you very much.
Do you remember that loud investor on the table who wanted to buy the whole of the UK games industry?
Indeed. Yeah,
I'm still talking to them. I'm going to try and sell a bit more of it to her next month. Let's try and get some money.
Some intros.
Yes, indeed. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us here at the Hub Crawl. I'd just like to say a big thank you. I work for Ukie as well, and I normally get asked to do all of these things, but this evening, 3/4 night off with Leo doing it. So thank you, Leo, for picking up this right. Well done. It's the best round of applause of the night. It's all downhill from here. So Chris, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing at the moment before we dive into this.
I'm Chris, been in the games industry since '97. Started off on the publishing side back in the day when everything was in a box. Moved over to development via a couple of startups. Based out of Guildford for a lot of that time. I feel a bit like an interloper this evening, having now moved to FuturLab 3 years ago. So what am I doing now? So I joined FuturLab really at the beginning of PowerWash's success. I think James and Kirsty, who set up FuturLab, knew they had a big hit on their hands, knew they wanted to stay close to making games and being creative. So they needed to get someone in to help them basically handle the growth, handle the expansion that they needed to go through.
And that's interesting, isn't it? If you think about the, I know I've sent you some questions, and I'm probably not going to ask any of them. But that challenge of a business that's really focused on being creative and highly creative, the difficulty of running a business while you try and stay focused on it, it's one of the biggest challenges that indie studios have. You see that across the board, and that's where you come in.
It is. That's why you need someone like me who really isn't bothered about being creative at all. Like that's the joke with James and Kirsty is I do all the boring bits, right? But there is. I mean, it's true. If you are highly creative, you want to stay close to making games, and you've got a hit. You've got a big choice to make, right? You've got to either you're involved in everything from ordering the toilet paper right the way through to to cash flow, whatever it may be, or you're really close to the fun bit, which is making the game. And you're right, it's a big choice, and I think James and Kirsty at the time was off on maternity leave anyway, but I think they are a highly creative pair. They knew what they wanted to do, and I feel lucky they chose me, to be honest, because it's been a great journey.
And I'm going to ask if there's a connection between being pregnant and coming up with great ideas later. So we'll park that one and see if there's something there. An interloper. So have you moved down to Brighton, or are you still?
No,
you're still a Surrey kid.
I'm still Hampshire now. Hampshire, darling. Yeah.
Oh,
So Guildford for a long time. I just got to come down 1 or 2 days a week. We're remote anyway, so with COVID we were remote. We've only got a small office, but we've grown from I think we're about 20 people now up to over 100. But they're spread out all over the country now.
I've been to the office. You can't fit over 100 in there, can you?
Absolutely
That would be
not.
super tight. But let's go. Can we go back to the start of FuturLab? This is the story I'm most interested in, thinking about the local success. You know, an amazing story. I was at a thought leadership event the other day, and this very clever guy stood up and he said, FuturLab, they're an overnight success, 20 years in the making, and. What's the backstory to FuturLab? What's the origin story?
The origin story, as told to me. So really, it started off with James Marsden, who wanted to make music at a time where Napster had just come out. Really was struggling to get any traction with a musical career. Decided, I'll make games so that I can make music for games, and that was really the motivation behind it. He started off in Flash games, and then through. Really, just pitching well, being really genuine, built up a very good relationship with Sony, got the first sort of game off the ground there. And then, I think probably like a lot of indies, right, they just boxed clever for a long time. They really hung on by their fingernails a couple of times, but hung in. And eventually, you you get that lucky once, right? And they stayed in the game long enough to really get lucky. But I think that the pivotal moment for them was early on. They were really making the games that the format holders wanted, so they were pitching features. They were really trying to make their games fit whatever the format holders at the time were after, particularly Sony. But they kind of then moved away from that and took some time to think about what is it the players really want, what is it that we can do with the size of team that we've got, and that's where PowerWash came from, really.
And I'm interested in, so this business sets up, they set sail, off they go. If we think about, there's lots of small studios in the room, was there a plan at FuturLab? And you weren't around at the time, but did that plan change? Is there...
that plan would have changed a lot, right? So I think that, particularly in the early days, you've got to hustle, right? You've got to find the money, you've got to find someone who's willing to back you. And you've got to be able to pivot quickly when opportunity comes your way. So I think there was probably a broad plan, but it was more of an aspiration, right? And then you hit the ground, so what's that saying? Everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face, right? Circumstances change all the time, so you've got to adapt really quickly.
Is that Mike Tyson?
I can't remember. Probably was.
Play tonight. Thank you for bringing him into this evening. They worked with Sony early on. That seemed to be a route to success. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? How can you make friend of Sony? That's a difficult ask for a small studio.
Well, I think personality goes a long way, particularly in those days, right? I think at the time Sony were investing in indie games, indie titles. So their PlayStation Network was just getting off the ground. So there was scope really for small creative titles to be commissioned and to make the way out, right? And I think they worked that relationship. They stayed very close to Sony for a long time. But the winds have changed. Sony changed their approach, and they had to find alternatives.
Cool. And you mentioned James, one of the founders. I've got a little story about James. I happened to an event at Comedia in Brighton, just up the road, and I asked a question of one of our speakers. Very polite person that I am. Asked a question. This person gave a fairly wafty answer. Didn't really necessarily answer it, and I thought, it doesn't matter, we'll move on to the next one. James put his hand up when the question I want to ask is why you didn't answer the question. Can you now answer it, please? That's the kind of character he is.
There we go.
But
yeah.
things get done.
Yeah, things get done. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about ideas? I've written down the word here, ideation. That's a word I never thought I'd use, but just forgive me that one. I'm really interested that personally, I think that the strength of FuturLab has always been in the ideas that they have behind the games. They're innovative, creative, really intoxicating when you play them. Is there a process that you go through as a company to come up with these ideas? Is there a format to that? How can people in the room perhaps learn from that?
I don't think there's a process as much as there's a focus, and there really is a focus on what we call sort of starting with the toy. So really focusing in on that mechanic that makes it fun. We're getting that right above all else and then building out from there, rather than perhaps starting with a high concept and then sort of trying to find the gameplay. So it really is about building that core mechanic. And if you look at PowerWash in particular, it's that moment-to-moment gameplay that really nails it. And then, on top of that, as we've scaled, we've now, it used to be James and Kirsty would come up with the lion's share of the ideas. We do things like pitch jams where basically we coach people in the studio to put together a presentation, we show them a dummy pitch, we put together a budget, and we take them through the whole process so that they're not just coming up with ideas, but they're also thinking then about how that game would be made, how many people they would need. And again, a lot of people who join indie studios at some point want to run their own studio, and our view is that we take people through that process so they start having an idea of the mechanics behind just making a game in terms of running a studio.
And in between ordering the toilet roll, were you invited into those rooms to discuss your creativity?
Honestly, I think I knew the answer before you asked the question.
Oh dear. Well, let's get on to PowerWash Simulator, shall we? I mean, this is the game. It says here, how has it changed FuturLab? Well, it has changed it dramatically. What are the... I suppose the things I'm interested in is how on earth and when did you identify that it was going to be a success? Did you know it before it was developed? Was there always an idea that this could be something?
I think for a couple of people in the studio, so Kirsty in particular, who came up with the idea, she knew how much she loved watching PowerWash videos on Reddit, right? And that's where this came from. So there's a Reddit channel called PowerWash Porn, you know. And in terms of just, she was pregnant. It was a tough project she was working on. Just using videos of power washing to relax, you know, sow the seed for the game, right? And then it was only when they were then thinking, okay, what can we make, you know, that they were actually talking about first-person shooter, and then as a joke, power washing, and then it sort of came from there. Sorry, that wasn't the question. The question was, how did it change the studio, wasn't it?
Well, there's a bit on how it changed the studio, and when do you wake up and realise this is going to change everything?
So I think there was a lot of confidence, but you don't actually know. Just to the point made earlier on, right? Until it's out of the public, you really don't know what's going to happen, right? So it was that early access, in particular, I think the organic growth, the growth through influencers just picking up the game and going, oh my god. And there's also an element, I think, with PowerWash of a lot of people just thinking it's just going to be a bit weird, and then realising it's amazing fun, and then telling their mates they found this weird, rich, fun game, and it sort of spread from there.
We're not recording this. Is it fun? Do you enjoy playing it?
I enjoy playing it, but I am nowhere near as obsessed as some.
Kirsty, the aforementioned Kirsty, one of the fans of the company, said to me, you know, I'm pregnant, I've had this idea for a game, it's going to be amazing. And what I did was left it to the company and basically got them to bring this to market. Is there a connection between her creativity and being pregnant? Because she's pregnant again at the moment. Are we now expecting the next big release for Future?
There's another big game she's just got.
Is that?
Just literally got running before, so she's done it again. Great sort of game director, sets the creative direction.
Then buggers off and leaves everyone else to do it.
But lets the leads actually create the game, right? With a good landing zone established.
So let's just keep on the PowerWash Simulator theme. So the game's up and running, it's being successful. How do you what's the process for kind of looking at the success of this game and going, right, how do we maximise this? How do we keep it going? How can we ride this as long as possible? What's the thought process you go to? I mean, a lot of people never get to that stage where having such a successful title, but let's all hope we're having it one day. Yeah. What do you say?
So stage one is get a mega hit, right? The easy bit. So what was the process? So we had a game where we could see that people were not just playing the game, they were playing the game through and then playing it again, which told us that there was really, there was a hunger for great content. And really what we weren't set up for was to make that content as quickly as we would have liked, right? Because small team, not really set up for any kind of long tail DLC, regular releases, etc. So the first challenge was building, just scaling, getting the right people on board so that we could really start making the content that people wanted. I think, if you look at where we were, it took us about 6 months from initial release to start getting a decent cadence of content coming through. And that was a lot of pain, basically. The team went through a lot of pain just in terms of just struggling to get content out as we were also recruiting. So they were onboarding people, but we got through it. And then now we've got a regular cadence of great content coming through, and hopefully a wonderful future.
We'll talk about two of those components, if that's all right. So, over what time did the company grow, and by how many? Because you say you're at, 120 now?
We're 102, I think, right now, but we'll be 120 soon, yeah. So I was employee 23, so over 2.5 years we've added 80 people.
Wow.
So it was quite, but we've always been very careful on who we treat. Again, getting the right people on the bus is a really great lesson, right? Making sure that the people you're getting in are a great cultural fit, that they're gonna work well with the team that you've got, and they've got the right values, I think is essential. Because if you don't do that, then you might scale quickly, but you're going to end up really in a world of pain for years to come. So, sorry, I've totally forgotten. I'm not very good at this.
I'm trying to keep it going. You keep moving me off track. But I'm going to jump ship a little bit and move into a question about Brighton then. If we're talking about recruitment and need to bring people in, you're not from Brighton, that's fine. But you've seen people come into the company. how many of them are from the local area, are, Brighton's a great place to make games. There's lots of really amazing studios here and always regenerating and growing. What is it about Brighton that makes it good for games?
I feel probably the least qualified to answer that question in the room, but I'll give it a go. My experience of Brighton, just really not having come down and sort of experienced the dev scene until 3 years ago, it's genuinely a cosmopolitan place where people can be themselves, and the value of having people who are really themselves, no matter who they are in the studio, is amazing. So I think the real strength in Brighton is that people are who they are. Everyone's natural, everyone's just fitted in and gets going. So it makes for a great atmosphere.
Now, I'm going to be a pedant, but first I'm just going to say in a second I'm going to come to any questions from the audience, so feel free to think of anything and I'll come to you in a couple of minutes, so get your thinking caps on. I mean, technically, you're in Hove, and I'm from Hove myself.
Are you really?
I am from Hove, so I'm...
What was so bad about Hove that you moved so far away?
I couldn't afford to live in Hove. I went away... Do you really want the story?
I asked a question, see if you stick to topic now.
Go on in. I went abroad to do my degree, came back, couldn't afford to live here. So I've moved to the east. The east. I'd much rather live here. But can we start calling you a Hove studio? Do you think that would be acceptable?
No, go, yes, go Hove.
Is that all right?
Absolutely. Isn't it the phrase Hove darling or something?
It's Hove actually.
Hove actually, sorry.
But thanks for not knowing that. So I'm interested in, I mean, you're the businessman.
I try and be, yeah.
And I think it's really important. I know it's all about the creative process and loving games and what have you, but your track record is actually amazingly successful games companies, and you're the common link between it. So I'm being very nice to you, which I'm not normally. So take it while you can. What do we need to think about as the people in the room here? The sort of the variety of business models and structures. There's so many different ways of trying to commercialise games. What's your sort of process for trying to drill down into which ones suit a company and how you make it work? Is there a route? Is there a sheet that you go through and do check-offs?
There isn't a sheet. I think there are some really core principles that you learn the hard way. But cash flow really is king, right? Understanding what's going out when, understanding not just if you've got sales coming in, but when that cash is going to land, particularly in the early days, is absolutely essential, right? So that's kind of the most important thing is make sure you understand where the money's coming from, when it's going to land. I think after that, when it comes to monetization, I think it's always going to be true to the values of yourself and be true to the values of your game. Don't try and squeeze in a technique or something that really goes against your own beliefs or the beliefs of the community you're trying to serve. I can't remember again, sorry, what was that it? Is there any more to that one?
We're looking for some general business guidance and advice, and that's good. That's a good couple of things there. What about people? Where are people on the scale of importance?
Massively important. Getting the right people more than anything else, I think. And we've always taken the view that personalities forever, skills can be built. So you're looking for people that genuinely fit your culture. Obviously, if they've got the right skills, that's great as well. But ideally, if you've got a choice, or you have to make a choice, then you go for personality over skills because you can build the skills. But getting the right people is really important. And I think, particularly when we were growing, it was then looking at we needed to basically add layers of management, because suddenly you've got you go from 20 people to 100 people, and it was really looking at the people internally and trying to pick and grow leaders from inside, rather than trying to bring people. We could have brought in external experts or whatever it may be, but it would have changed the culture dramatically. So we really tried to promote from internally. And
if James is off making music and Kirsty's off doing something else, that's down to you, isn't it?
Watch FuturLab crash and burn next year.
I do have a question. What's the future of FuturLab? We'll come back to that one. I also want to ask you about the recent, you're in the news, the acquisition. So I'm going to ask you some pointed questions about that in a second, if that's all right.
That's right. Yeah.
Nothing too heavy. Yeah. Any questions from the audience for Chris while we've got all the hands go straight up? I'm going to go to this gentleman first, if that's all right. Do you want to try shouting?
Yes.
Thank you.
As the business guy, have you ever had to, I want to say, reel in creative members of your team?
Constantly.
The balance between creative and business people.
It's more, it's less reeling in the creativity, it's more maintaining a focus, right? Because a lot of creative people get excited by the bright new shiny thing, but sometimes you've actually got to finish the game you started rather than, you know, exploring a new mechanic or whatever it may be. People can genuinely be creative, but then you need to deliver, right? You need to keep people focused on the here and now sometimes, rather than just new idea, new thing, because you need to ship stuff if you want to stay alive, right?
You're being called the businessman by the others. I think that's my fault.
That
I'm
was
so
you.
sorry. Yeah, I started that trend. Long may it continue. Yes, John.
How do you protect your wholesome, cosy brand against the sexy PowerWash claims?
Are there any clones?
There are loads of clones on mobile. There's a couple coming out, but how do we do that? I think for us, we've got a really good focus on our community, making sure we're serving them well, making sure we look after them well. We're very, very careful about what we ship and maintain the quality of what we're doing. I think there's also just an advantage of being first, being best, and just keeping the content flowing, right? People aren't looking anywhere else. And we're very fortunate that the clones to date have been pretty shoddy, if I'm honest, so it helps, right? Cool.
They're not always going to be shoddy though, are they? But I'm going to ask a quick question in a second. But before we dive into that, another way that you're differentiating yourself from the clones is having great IP that you're incorporating within it. That's a really good idea. I'll give you the credit for it. How's that going? And what are sort of the requirements if you're going to bring in recognised IP? You've done some SpongeBob stuff and the like. What's the sort of criteria? What are you looking for there? And is there a holy grail out there, which I know that you haven't got yet, that you want?
I know there always is, right? There's some amazing IPs, and I think early on, you know, when we talked about the concept, it really was power washing Millennium Falcon was where we want to get to, right? And we're not there yet, so we've still got some work to do. I think in terms of criteria, early on, it's about guts, right? There's two things, really. There's gut and there's actually what you can sign rather than what you'd like to sign, right? And the other thing is not to just do what people are expecting. So there are a couple of IPs that we've turned down because they felt a bit samey to stuff that we've already done, or they felt they're expected. So it's keeping people on their toes, I guess, to a certain degree.
So people coming to you saying,
well,
do you want to clean my... whatever it is.
I'm not going to say what, but yeah. That's another point, just in terms of getting this going. We had the idea very early on, and we had zero traction from any IP. You're turning up going, I've got this game called PowerWash, I'd like to put, you know, SpongeBob in it. It's like, yeah, ha, very funny, move on. But then, really, and this is where, you know, we had great support from Square Enix Collective, where they actually licensed us Tomb Raider and they licensed us Final Fantasy, just to seed the market, just to prove to those big IPs that we could be trusted with them. So, you know, it's kudos to Square as well for how they supported us early on to get the traction that then got us to SpongeBob and others. Yeah.
Would you ever consider cleaning a Barclays bank?
Well, there's got to be sponsorship money involved, presumably. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a money laundering joke there or something. Let's move on from that.
Yeah.
You had a question, sir?
Yes. So you mentioned influencers really enjoy PowerWash, and I was wondering whether from the seed of the idea being watching PowerWash videos on Reddit, did that then ultimately generate videos PowerWash on Reddit, and as you become
it hasn't done that, but it's yeah, I think it's spawned something else. So we've got one of our influencers is actually now running a talk show where effectively he brings people on and they're just power washing and chatting away, you know. So which is amazing in its own right, and that's one of the bigger ones. So it hasn't, but there's clearly it has that same kind of relaxing influence on you, whether you're watching power washing or PowerWash Simulator.
Should we do a quick straw poll? So put your hands up if you've ever power washed anything. Put your hands up. And keep your hands up if you enjoyed it. You've got it, mate. Are you spending all your time on Reddit now looking for the most popular videos? And that's not a good thing to do, surely.
No, it's not. Get lost in there.
Oh, my word. I will come back to see if there's any more questions in a second, but can we talk about the acquisition, the big news, the Miniclip acquisition? Amazing company, Miniclip. Not done anything like what you do. Is it a good fit?
It's been an amazing fit, and again, I think if you step away from the games that they make, the game that we've made, the first thing, and we had, the founders deliberately went through a process. They were trying to sell. It was really looking for people like us, ultimately, right? So it was looking for a really good culture fit, something that made strategic sense for us, something that would allow us to still be us post-acquisition, right? So I think if when we first sort of were invited to pitch the Miniclip, we were a bit cross-eyed and like, well, they're a mobile free-to-play company. Why? Okay, we'll do it, but it probably doesn't make sense for either side. But that, having met them, having got to know them, that changed what we were thinking, for sure.
And do you still feel like you're an independent studio? Because I always talk about your company as one of sort of the leading UK indie studios. Can I still do that?
I don't know, I'll let someone else argue about the definition of an indie. But in terms of feel, what Miniclip have done is hopefully give us some security for the long term, but day to day, they've been very true to their word, which was, we're buying you to learn from you, not to change you. We want you to keep doing what you're doing. We want you to be you, and they've allowed us to do that. So it's very easy on a day-to-day operational level to forget that we've been bought. Genuinely, we're just carrying on with our plan. That's it.
Well, my next question is, how have you changed since the acquisition? It sounds like not very much, but there must be benefits of being part of a larger group. They've got, before you, 1,100 people. There must be, or you're not seeing it yet, but I guess it will permeate over time, won't it?
I guess, yeah, we might see it over time. I don't know. So, there's practical things, like they've got an amazing office in London. We used to have to get people down to Hove for meetings and stuff. Now we can all go to London, and if you're based in Manchester or Stafford or whatever, it's a day trip instead of an overnighter and things like that. So there's practical benefits, but there's no, because they've been so respectful and hands-off, we're not, there's no sudden scaling or adding money to, for marketing or whatever it may be, because they bought us in order to learn about PC console, not in order to just flood us with money and turn us free to play or whatever it may be.
That is interesting. We're seeing a lot of the mobile studios, particularly those funded from China originally, saying they need to get into console and PC, which seems a bit alien to us as we're trying to get into mobile and be successful. But I guess you invest in people that know what they're doing on PC and console, which is the UK, and that's why people make.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very true. There's an awful lot of talent. There's an awful lot of great studios. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask you one final question about the future. You might not be able to say anything, but I'm going to try. But last chance, any questions from the audience? Indeed, yes.
How viable do you think the sort of slow growth that FuturLab had hanging on until the big hit came, how viable do you think that is now for a studio starting out?
That's a good question. That's better than my questions. So, here's the microphone. Interesting. So it took a while to get it going. Is that still possible? Could there be another FuturLab out there doing the same thing, where it's taken some time, clinging on, as you say, and hanging on in there, and still having this kind of success?
I think, I'm sure, and I had a studio in Guildford that came so close to going bust so many times, it was crazy, right? So I think when you say viable, it's like how much pain are you willing to soak up, rather than, no one's living the dream while clinging on to a certain degree, right? So I'm not sure viable's the right word. I think that right now it's really, really tough, right? But, things will get better. So I don't think I can say how viable it is. It's not a great plan, right, to go, right, I'm going to cling on and risk my house and whatever it is for 18, 20 years before I can have a success, right? That wasn't the plan going in. It's just how it worked out. But I think, off the back of that, I'd say only stick with it for as long as you're really enjoying it, right? Because you've got to enjoy the journey, because it's rare to have a hit like PowerWash or CSR or whatever it may be. It's not everyone's destiny, right? You've got to enjoy the day-to-day. You've got to enjoy making games. Otherwise, it's a hard way to make a living.
Can I just add a point? That a bunch of our clients are like single-person studios, two-people studios, and you really only need the income. Like our first client was a guy who was so funny, jumped on the call, just I've got laundry all over the background in his sofa, and he made a game, and it makes him an uploading survivor in one, and that's it, and he's iterating, and so you can't, I mean, as long as you've got enough running to survive, okay, definitely, because we speak to people like that all the time.
There's an awful lot of people making games out of love.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's an art form. It's not just a business, right?
So we know. Any more questions? If not, I'll go to the final question. Pizza's here in 4 minutes.
That question?
No? Didn't sound like a question. Pizza's here now. Right, quick, let's get this last question in. The future. I don't know what you can share, and it might be a little bit unknown with the recent acquisition and what have you, but I know you, there's always a plan. What do you want to share with us? What are you looking forward to at FuturLab in the years to come?
I think one of the biggest challenges a studio like ours has got is turning a hit into a franchise. You know, so and what does that look like? You know, these days. So you'll see the answer as we progress. I'm not going to say so. That's like one big challenge. So it is that, you know, real laser focus on why can't, you know, PowerWash be the same as Farming Simulator in terms of the longevity that it enjoys, you know, and a great relationship with its players. And then the other bit of the future is, you know, that difficult second album, right? What is the next game? You know, and how does it work? And as I say, you know, we're fortunate enough to be rolling on that one already. So watch this space, but I'm not giving anything away.
Watch this space. Thanks for that brilliant answer. I wouldn't expect anything more. But do keep an eye on the progress FuturLab. And put your hands together and thank Chris for joining us.